Good day and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I'm your host, the voice of reason. So, in our ongoing coverage of the Ethiopian Civil War taking place obviously in the former state of Ethiopia, the fighting continues. I would like to go back very briefly in history and talk about the beginning of the conflict, the middle stages of the conflict, and where we're at now, and some of the tones that have been coming out of both sides, but specifically the Ethiopian state media, the Amhara regional media, and what has been saying, because it's been very difficult to truthfully follow the course of the conflict based on that information. And that's not being biased, that is simply telling the truth, and I'll try to explain. So 10 months ago, this conflict started. It was started with a very robust and somewhat surprise attack by forces of the Eritrean military and the Ethiopian military into the Tigray region to subjugate a political opponent. And that is what occurred. Within weeks of that conflict starting, after large parts of the Tigray region had been occupied by this surprise attack, the conflict continued. Now, it was called a law enforcement operation at the beginning. Now we understand it's not a law enforcement operation. There's ethnic cleansing, there is genocide, there is conventional war taking place. Now, rewind 10 months ago, the fighting, within the scope of the fighting, we would perpetually hear, even in the comment section of this particular channel, which would get their information obviously from the Ethiopian state and the Amhara regional state government. And the common theme 10 months ago was this conflict will be over in a few weeks. The TPLF junta will be in prison and incarcerated or killed. A month later, as the conflict continues, same rhetoric. Within 2 weeks, the conflict will be over. TPLF, TDF junta will be in prison or in jail. 6 months, a half a year into the conflict, the same rhetoric. The conflict will be over in 2 weeks. The TPLF junta, the TDF junta will be in prison or in jail. Present day, the forces of the Ethiopian army, the forces of the Eritrean army have been evicted from most parts of the Tigray region. The conflict is now taking place deep inside of the Amhara region. Okay, the fighting is no longer really taking place inside of Tigray. The fighting is now taking place inside of the Amhara region, which generally means one side may be losing. The side that appeared to be winning at the start of the conflict now appears to be losing. But at the same time, that side continues to say the conflict will be over in 2 weeks. The TDF and TPLF junta will be in prison or incarcerated or killed. So they've been saying that for about 10 months now. So from an outside observer's viewpoint, looking in, trying to understand what is going on, and when you hear that from the Ethiopian state, from the Amhara regional government, continuing to tell what is tantamount to lies, because the conflict will not be over in 2 weeks, and the TPLF, TDF junta will not be in prison or killed. Past performances are indicative of future results, and where we sit right now, that is simply not the fact. So again, 10 months ago, hearing the same rhetoric in terms of what was happening, and to this day, as the fighting is really manifesting itself deep into the Amhara region, and I'll kind of get into the specifics of the update for today, kind of what's going on and where we kind of sit. Things are not looking good for the state of Ethiopia. Things really haven't looked good for the state of Ethiopia and the Amhara regional paramilitaries since really probably month 3 of the conflict. That's really where it started to turn, and then 6 months into it, we could really, at least in terms of the way the composition of the Ethiopian armed forces inside of the Tigray region was acting, the way it was quite literally leaderless at times, and that transposed itself onto the battlefield to the current results we're seeing now. But where we sit right now, obviously the fighting is very intense right now, and we are seeing a major push. And I talked earlier in an earlier video about how we would see perpetual swings in this conflict, and at one point yesterday, and again, we have to listen to the Amhara regional news sources. We have to listen to the Ethiopian state news sources, because they are providing what would be, under normal circumstances, people would think it would be somewhat truthful, but unfortunately it's not, and you really have to take it with a grain of salt. But right now and again, the battlefield is fluid. The front lines are very fluid. We can't say there are these stable lines, but right now it would appear that with this Tigrayan Defense Force buildup that has happened in the southwestern front, and that would be the front facing Debark and the areas south of IDRK, the TDF has what looks like experienced a breakthrough. And it would appear that we are seeing very large elements of the TDF now counterattack and are pressing north. They have engaged some fairly significant units of the Amhara regional paramilitaries and the Ethiopian state military. And again, these two are starting to blur the lines in terms of who they are, right? So the Ethiopian military may in fact be these Amhara regional paramilitaries. At times they wear the same uniforms, they're being supplied from the same sourcing, so they look the same. But do they call themselves the same? Are they the same ethnic makeup? Quite possibly not. Completely different. But it would appear that there was some very significant engagements south of DRK, and we are receiving reports that the TDF infiltration unit. So the TDF right now is fighting both a conventional conflict, and it's also fighting almost a rear area partisan conflict, where it is taking forces and they are infiltrating those forces deep behind the lines, or the proverbial lines, so to speak, of the Ethiopian army. And again, these lines are not fluid. They're not well maintained. Even on the TDF side, we've seen cases where Amhara regional paramilitaries have infiltrated behind the TDF. So kind of remove the thought process of standard front lines in terms of conflicts you would see elsewhere in the world, say World War II or whatever it is. This is just a different conflict right now. But right now we are seeing TDF infiltration units press as far right now as, and we're receiving reports that they could be as far as about 20 miles or maybe 50 kilometers or so from the city of Gondar. And that's where we're at right now. And we're hearing reports that the Prime Minister of Ethiopia has visited front lines, allegedly possibly in the area near Gondar, and that is to try and shore up the operational integrity of the forces that are trying to engage the TDF. But things right now on the southwestern front, from Debark down to Gondar, are not looking good for the TDF, or I'm sorry, for the Ethiopian army. I'm sure that will be used in the comments section because I misspoke. Fire away, not a problem. But what we're seeing is mass surrenders. We're seeing a breakdown in cohesion. We're seeing the force structure of the Ethiopian army, the Amhara paramilitaries, and again, we got to blur the vision a little bit, because to distinguish between the two is becoming more and more difficult. which I said would occur. And again, we eventually, I believe you will see an Amhara military apparatus maybe calling itself an Ethiopian military apparatus, but in fact it will simply be an Amhara regional army calling itself something that it probably isn't. But right now we are seeing fairly significant defeats. We're seeing equipment being captured. We're seeing soldiers being taken into POW camps in terms of these Amhara paramilitaries in the Ethiopian army. But again, very heavy fighting along this front, and we're also seeing fighting as well on other areas as well. We've hit that alleged 24-hour deadline for the surrender of Dese. Could we see an all-out attack on the town of Dese? Possibly. We'll see what happens. We do know that activity is very, again, fluid in this area. The Tigrayan Defense Forces firmly control everything from basically Mursa north, and that would include Weldia, Kobo, and then obviously west all the way to Gashina. We're also now receiving reports that the Tigrayan Defense Forces have possibly taken this town of Wagtena. And that would be crucial because that was the staging ground from Dese to Wagtena to for these Amhara paramilitaries to make a move earlier on Gashina, which were then driven out. But securing that could possibly be a major turning point in the conflict for the TDF and really kind of condense these lines into one fluid line from Gashina, Wagtena down to Wachali. But we'll continue to monitor that as well. But again, and we continue to hear from the Ethiopian state, the Amhara regional paramilitary regional media. What I'm seeing now is when things start to go badly, they really start honking the horn of victory, meaning you start to really hear erroneous reports that they are winning, and meaning the Ethiopian state and Amhara regional militias are making progress and they're driving back the Tigrayan Defense Force. And when you hear that loud, what it really means is they're not having a very good time. They're having difficulties, and that has been kind of the course of the conflict. The louder they honk that horn of victory, you know something possibly is wrong, because they're trying to stabilize the morale within their own armed forces and the people that they are governing as well. And unfortunately, those people are probably in many cases not getting the accurate truth, and unfortunately, that is unfortunate. But that's where the conflict stands as we speak today. Again, some fairly major developments and fairly major ongoing battles as the TDF continues to push down towards Gondar. Again, fluid, back and forth, not stable lines, but what we can confirm by video documentation is the Ethiopian state, whether that be the Amhara region that is controlling everything or the remnants of the Ethiopian state, they have taken losses. Their soldiers are being loaded into prisoner of war buses and moved north, and that is the status quo. We're not seeing that on the other side. We're not seeing large volumes of TDF soldiers who have been captured and loaded onto bus and transported wherever they could be transporting them. But that is the situation as we speak. We'll continue to monitor the situation and report to everyone, but I think we're entering a stage of the conflict that could be pivotal in terms of the losses and the victories that are taking place right now on the part of the TDF. The TDF is reporting some very significant casualty figures on the part of the Ethiopian army and the Amhara regional militaries. Again, it's very difficult to ascertain given the situation on the ground, but obviously those reports are very high in terms of the casualties the Ethiopian army is taking. But again, we're also seeing validity in terms of video evidence of this activity actually occurring itself. So again, we'll continue to monitor the situation and report and make more videos. Again, I hope everyone has a great day and a happy New Year for all those folks living in the Horn of Africa region.